Hey guys, it is Aoife from Fred Weasley Died Laughing, and I am here with my first September weekly wrap up. So I am sorry for the slight change in the location this week. It is just pretty late at night, and this place in my room has the best lighting. So it's just going to be here this week. Hopefully I will be back in my normal spot in front of my bookshelf next week. So this is all kind of boring. There's nothing really around me except my dream catcher. So the first book I read this week was called Born of Shadow, and it was by an author called Sarah Benson. And Sarah actually she reached out to me and asked me if I would like to read her book in exchange for an honest review, and I said yes, of course. So Born of Shadow is about a girl called Cami who on her 17th birthday she gets a mysterious package from the grandparents she has over in Egypt, who she doesn't really know. She had never had any contact with her dad's side of the family over in Egypt until this day. And her dad is actually dead, so she can't, so she's never had any kind of connection with them at all. So she ends up getting this plane ticket from her grandparents to go over to Egypt to go and get to know them, because they finally want to try and get to know her. And she says yes, and she goes over, and her grandparents are nowhere to be found. And then all these weird things start happening with these kind of weird shadow creatures. And she gets new friends. She meets a cousin that she'd never known before, and they go on this adventure to try and kind of stop what is happening and try and figure out what is happening and try and stop it, and to save the Egyptian people who are being kind of persecuted and enslaved by these weird shadow creatures. So overall this was good. I did like it. I think the historical part of it was very good, quite well researched. There's a lot of about gods and about the pyramids and different kind of archaeology kind of different things to do with archaeology and what you might find, and how the digs and excavations are processed, I guess. And then as well, a lot of stuff to do with Alexander the Great and his death and his burial and all the mystery surrounding him was pretty cool to read. And then the shadow creatures was quite exciting, and just the adventure was quite to try and figure out what is going on and how they're going to stop it, because it almost seemed like they weren't going to be able to do anything. So it kind of has that kind of atmospheric to it, It did start off quite slow, I felt. It wasn't until a good 50% in, or over 50% in, that it really started to heat up for me, the story. And then I didn't feel a huge connection to Cami or any of the characters. She kind of annoyed me a little bit, but she didn't really annoy me, but I don't know, I just felt a little bit distant from her. I wasn't really relating to her at all. So I think that maybe took away from my enjoyment a little bit from the book. And while there is no insta-love, there is like a very strong flirtation quite early on in the book. And I would actually have preferred Cami to have better relationship building with her cousin that she finds, rather than with this guy, because she's been on her own her whole life except for her mum. She doesn't know any of her family, and this girl is quite close in age to her, so I think it would have been nicer to have her reconnect properly with her family, rather than kind of not ignore her family, but not seem as keen to really get to know her, and she was more interested in the guy. So I would prefer that maybe for the love interest to happen in the second part, in the second book, which I haven't read, but there is going to be a second book, or there is a second book, because I think it's going to be a trilogy. I'm not sure if it's going to be a series or a trilogy, but overall it's quite good. And I think if someone enjoys kind of Egyptian based stories, or Greek stories, even if you like Greek gods or that kind of historical Greek, because there is some ties into the Greek gods and some ties into Greek history, with Alexander the Great in the book. So I think if someone likes that, they'll probably like the book. So I gave it a 3 stars overall. I did have it marked as a 3.5 stars in Goodreads, but I think with thinking about it more now that it's been a few days since I read it, I think I'm going to bump it down to just a 3 stars, because I don't think I enjoyed it that much that it would be a 3.5. So I think I'm going to leave it as a 3 stars for now. And the second book I picked up this week is The First Phone Call from Heaven by Mitch Albom. So this is about a little town in, I think it's Michigan, and these few people in this town, the residents of this town, suddenly start getting these weird phone calls, and apparently it is from people that they know who've died, who are now in heaven, and they are calling from heaven. So it is about these people and this town, and how they kind of suddenly become famous for these phone calls, and how people start flocking to this town, and there's this big kind of spiritual kind of gatherings in this town for people who want to try and reach out to people they know in heaven, or who have died. And then there's also, you know, protesters who come who think it's all a sham. And I thought it was a really, really good book. It was very good exploration, I think, into the culture of how things go viral today. Like, it, you know, one thing can be just really small one day, and then overnight it becomes this viral sensation. And I thought it was a really, really good exploration to that, and to the society that we live in today, where these things happen, and how they're treated, and how it can kind of go wrong, and how can it go wrong for some people and right for others. Yeah, so I did really, really enjoy it. I gave it 4 stars. And the third book I read this week was The Last Night in Montreal by St.John Mandel. I think if anyone has watched some of my previous videos, they know that I really, really enjoyed Station 11 by St.John Mandel, and I gave it 5 stars, and I had said I wanted to read more of her books. So I saw this in the library and I picked it up. This is a really gorgeous cover. Really, really love this cover. So this is about a girl called Lilia, and basically Lilia, when she was at the age of 7, she was abducted by her father from her mother's house, and basically since the age of 7 she has been on the run, and now she's an adult in her 20s, and she has kind of developed this part of her in her, just almost in her DNA. It's this part of her that she doesn't stay anywhere. She's always leaving, and she's always kind of thinking of leaving, and it's about kind of a little exploration into her past and her time with her dad, and you know, why she was abducted, and all these different things. And it's about the guy that she most previously left, her last boyfriend, who she walked out on, and how he doesn't want to let her go, and he's trying to find her and figure out what it is that's making her leave. And it was just really, really good. It had the same writing style as Station 11, kind of really, really beautiful, kind of a real magical kind of style, and the way she describes things is gorgeous. I think I really, really love her prose in all her books. She's just such a phenomenal writer. She's just a really, really good writer, and even this like small book is just so enjoyable, and it's just so filled with just amazing words put together that, you know, I just really, really enjoyed it. And I actually it is only like 200, it's a little bit over 200 pages long, but I actually spent like 2-3 days reading it, where I'd actually only really expected to read it in one day. But I ended up spending a little bit more time reading it, and I'm kind of glad I did, because I kind of just drank the words in, and I really enjoyed it, and I gave it a 4.5 stars. And the last book that I read this week, I actually finished at like 1 a.m. last night, because it was so good and I just couldn't put it down. It was The Girl You Left Behind by JoJo and Moyes. So I was kind of unsure about this, because I have read 2 books by JoJo and Moyes before. I have read Me Before You, which I absolutely adored, and I gave 5 stars, and I read another one of her books called The Horse Dancer, which I wasn't too mad about. I wasn't really crazy about that one. So I wasn't really sure how I'd feel about that, because so far it's been 50-50 with me with her writing. But I really, really enjoyed this one. It was just so beautiful. This is about a girl. It takes part in 2 different times. First of all, we get Sophie's story. She is living in a French town under German occupancy in 1916, and it's about her husband is a painter, and she doesn't know where he is. She doesn't know whether he's alive or dead, because obviously he went and joined the army for the war. And it's about this painting that she has in her house in this town, and a German commander who is in charge of the town now, he becomes obsessed with the painting, and he becomes a little bit obsessed with Sophie, and it's how Sophie kind of will risk everything she can to keep her husband alive and to try and find her husband again. And then we meet Liv, who is in 2006, and she actually owns that painting now of Sophie. And she was given that painting by her husband, but now her husband is dead. And she's kind of still dealing with that grief and that loss and trying to find herself. And she kind of meets some new people and embarks on a new relationship, but then suddenly something happens that kind of wrecks her new relationship, and it's all to do with Sophie, and suddenly she needs to find out Sophie's history and find out what happened to Sophie. So it's that exploration. It was really, really good. I really loved it. The first part of it, where we had with Sophie, it gave us enough of Sophie that we really, really loved her, and then it kind of cut off where we just really wanted to know what happened, and it just really makes you keep reading. And then you have Liv going in, and you know, there's so many parts of Liv that are so similar to Sophie. They're both quite fragile, but at the same time they're quite strong and obstinate when they're met with obstacles. You know, but I find all their love interests were quite similar. You know, Liv was married to an architect who was, you know, an artist in his own way, and Sophie is married to an artist. And then I found even Liv's new love interest was a little bit like Sophie's husband as well. So I love finding all these different comparisons in the book, because I felt that they were quite full of them as well. There was a lot of different comparisons where you could compare Sophie's life to Liv's life and how similar they were at the same time, you know, completely separated in history. So it was just a really good read. I flew through it. It's like more than 500 pages. But I really flew through it. Yeah, it's just a little bit over 500 pages. But I read it really quickly. I think if anyone does love the style of writing that is in Me Before You, you will like this book. And there's enough of the historical. It's not too deep in historical facts, because obviously it is supposed to be just kind of a, I wouldn't say chick lit, but kind of a women's literature, maybe I can say. But there's just enough of it that keeps you going, and you know, is really nice, and you know, it's not too packed with facts. So I really liked that, and it's well researched as well, and just a really good book. So I gave it 4.5 stars overall, and I really loved it. And right now I am reading Sabriel by Garth Nix, so I'm finally reading this book. I really hate this cover though. It was the only one in my library. I kind of wish there was another one, but oh well. So let me know what you guys read this week, what you think of the books I read, and I will see you guys again next time. So bye!